Good evening. We bring you greetings in Jesus' name. What better way to spend an evening, a Wednesday night, than to look into some truths from God's Word? And I hope each one of you are blessed, challenged, and inspired to go on as you leave here tonight. And as we look at the message tonight, the mission of the Christian family, maybe it's a little more geared to parents that have children around, but I think it's a message for everybody, for grandparents, for aunts and uncles, even for just relating here in the church as we apply these truths that are kind of laid out for maybe the family as we look at it tonight. So as we think about the mission of the Christian family, I think the greatest mission that we have, and I'm not sure what you came expecting me to tell you where to go, that you should go to Africa or go to South America. That's not what I believe is the greatest mission. The greatest mission for us as a Christian family is that we raise our children to bring honor and glory to God. And that is wherever He calls them, but that they would grow up to follow after Christ and to do His will wherever He leads them. And that's kind of what we want to look at tonight is how do we get to that point? How do we raise our children? What are some practical applications maybe to raising our children? Maybe just to start out here, over in South Africa many years ago, I think this happened in the early 1900s, if I remember right. There was a little boy, his name was, I'm going to call him Tysis. I'm not sure if that's how you say his African name, but a missionary came to his tribe, and throughout the course of the time that he was there, this little boy decided he wanted to go back with the missionary so he could go to school and to learn. And in doing that, his parents left him go back with the missionary. It was about a 9-day journey, I think it was, back to where the missionary was from, all by foot. And they walked through the jungle, so they were walking through past the lions and the hippos and the elephants, and they'd light fires at night to keep the lions away so that they wouldn't become animal food. And they made it back. It said it was a dangerous trip, but they made it back, and the little boy was learning, and he became a Christian. And one day he was on his way to class, and he saw the missionary's wife sweeping dirt into her dustpan. He was trying to learn English. He's like, "What's that thing called?" And she said, "It's a dustpan." He's like, "Okay, thank you." And he went on to school. At school, the teacher called his name, and he stood up and solemnly said, "Teacher, my name's no longer Tysis. My name is Dustpan." Teacher's like, "What? What do you mean by that?" And I want to read a little excerpt from the book. I think it'll get it better than if I just try to say it. But he said, "I was just passing your house and saw your wife sweeping with that tool called a dustpan in her hand. She carried all the dirt out of the hut with it. I want to be a dustpan too, so that when I go home, I may carry out the dirt from the lives of my father, my family, and all my friends. I want to be a dustpan for Jesus." And you might say, what does that have to do with our Christian family? I just want to remind us, as we are parents, as we are grandparents even, working with our children, it's not always going to be glorious. Do we glorify the dustpans in our house? Do we set them up on a mantle? It's hard work. Are we willing to do the hard work? Are we willing to be the dustpan, to carry out the dirt, teach him the truths of God's word? He did make it back to his family, and the missionary left him, went home, and came back a year later, and this little lad had 364 people waiting to be baptized when he got back. All because he was willing to be a dustpan for Jesus. Genesis 18:19 is going to be the theme verse for tonight. If you want, you can turn to that. So I guess one of the themes would be, it's hard work being a father. It's hard work being a parent. It's hard work leading our family in a godly manner. And we aren't always going to get recognition for that. Are we okay with that? Are we willing to put our efforts into our family, even though we might not get recognition for that. Genesis 18:19, God is speaking of Abraham here, and he says, "For I know him, that he will command his children and his household after him, and they shall keep the way of the Lord to do justice and judgment, that the Lord may bring upon Abraham that which he hath spoken of him." And what stuck out to me there were the first four words, "For I know him." God knew who Abraham was, and tonight he knows each one of us. And God just said, "For I know him, that he will command his children." I had to think my mind does some funny things maybe sometimes as I study, but I had to think, what if that would have said, "For I know him, but"? Would have that not changed the whole rest of that verse? When we put that little word "but" in there, we might say, "He's a good man, but," and then you wait for well, what's wrong with him? God didn't have that little word "but" in there about Abraham. He knew that Abraham was going to command his children to follow him, to keep the ways of the Lord. Can the Lord say that about each one of us? We are also instructed in Ephesians 6:4, a very familiar verse, "And ye fathers, provoke not your children to wrath, but bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord." Are we leading our families that our children aren't discouraged, that they aren't put down, but that we're teaching them the ways of the Lord, that we see that as a mission? It's not just another day with my children, but it's our mission to raise them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. I want to look here at 4 examples, maybe to start out, of some men, 3 from the Bible and 1 as a missionary, but maybe a little bit of an example of disconnect that these men had with their children. And they were all good men. They all did a lot of good. But we see what happens when fathers disconnect, and I think we can say when mothers also do. And I'm going to use the word father a lot, but I'm speaking to everybody here tonight, so don't feel neglected, ladies. It's for you too. But and the first one that my mind was drawn to was David. And we see David says he was a man after God's own heart. God said that about him. But when we look at his children and the lack of discipline that was there in the family, we see a murderer, we see rape. The list goes on there. There was a disconnect that he did not discipline his children. A father also must lead by example, and we know throughout David's life there was failures there too, where he did not set a good example for his children. And I think as I thought about it, that gives us reason for encouragement. It also gives us reason for consternation or whatever to take seriously life, because here was a man called a man after God's own heart, and he failed. So how much of a warning should that be? If David can fail, that means I can fail. But it's also, here's an imperfect man that God called a man after his own heart. So we see God still considered him a man after his own heart. His heart was at the right place, but there was still maybe some shortcomings. And not to put these men down, but just to realize that we're capable of this too, of doing a lot of good, but missing the mark in certain areas. Eli was another one that came to my example, a good man, a very religious, godly man. But he didn't have the backbone to stand up to his boys and say, we are not going in this path. We are not going to tolerate sin in our family. He was a passive father. What is passivity? In this case, you could say passivity means having a religion without reality. Do our children see that we have a form of religion, but in reality, we aren't walking with God? We aren't doing the things that God is calling us to. And we see a little bit of that in Eli's life. In 1 Samuel 2:29, it says there, "Wherefore kick ye at my sacrifice, and at mine offering, which I have commanded in my habitation, and honorest thy sons above me, to make yourselves fat with the chiefest of all the offering of Israel, my people." And I took from that verse that Eli was joining in with his sons in eating the offering meat that they were not to eat, because it says God was saying to make yourselves fat, and that I think would include Eli in that. If it doesn't, someone can straighten me out there afterwards. But we see him shirking his responsibilities as a father as he was involved in his work as a priest. And then one that we would say should have learned the lesson was Samuel. Samuel grew up with Eli. He saw everything that happened. But what happened with Samuel? He turns around and repeats the same errors that Eli had. And how often is that in our lives? We saw something that didn't work and we end up repeating it. A little example here from a missionary, William Carey. I don't know if you remember him in your studies in school, but he was, I believe, called the father of modern missions. I want to jump back to his boyhood as a 12-year-old boy. And I think this is where this character that he had as a 12-year-old served him well as he became a missionary. And it just kind of his life focus. But as a 12-year-old boy, he had a nature collection, and he was out in the woods one day, and he looked up and saw a bird's nest that he didn't have in his nature's collection, and was wondering, I think, what type it was, but he wanted to get this nest. But the lowest branch was up pretty high, and so he climbs up to the tree, grabs around it, starts shinning up the tree. He gets up a ways and hits some soft bark, and he falls down, and as he's holding on and sliding down, his hands get ripped up, and he gets back up, walks up to the tree, goes up again, gets up a ways, falls back down again. So he's going to make sure he gets up. So next time he grabs hold harder, works his way up, finally grabs that first branch, gets up on the branch, and now the bird's nest is out a ways on the branch. So he lays down on the branch and starts hand over hand and knee over knee, walking out this branch. He gets out close to the bird's nest, and there's a dead branch in the way, so he has to grab this branch. He grabs the branch to throw it out of the way so he could get to the bird's nest. He knocks himself off the branch, falls down to the ground, breaks his leg. No one's around. He's hollering for his mom, his dad, his sisters, his grandma. Finally, someone does hear him. They come out, pick him up, carry him in, and he's laid up for a couple weeks, however long a leg takes to heal up. He's walking around, still has a little bit of a limp. You know how, if you ever had a broken leg, I didn't, but I just see people, so I say you know how, but you got to build strength up in that leg. Well, anyway, he's limping around, and he sneaks off one day out to the tree again, gets out there, looks up, sure enough, the nest is still there. He works his way up slowly because of his broken leg, or it's his healed broken leg. It's still not real strong. Slowly gets up there, works his way out, gets his nest, comes back down. His parents are in the house worrying, where did this lad get to? And after a while, he comes limping into the house, big smile on his face. I got my bird's nest. That character of being determined, I think, is what helped him become a great missionary. But it also led to neglect of his family, his wife, his children, because in his determination to bring the gospel to India, they took a back seat. And again, he did a lot of good, brought a lot of people to the Lord, translated the Bible into a number of languages. But he left, he was so determined to go to India as a missionary, his first trip, he left home without his wife because she refused to go with. They got out to sea for a ways, and one of his partners, I think, had some bills that he hadn't paid before they left. So they made the ship come back to land for him to pay his bills. While he was home, between the time he left and the time he got back, his one child was born. So his wife consented to go with now and reluctantly went with him. But she never truly, I think, joined into his passion for what he had. And it drove her to insanity. And in, let's see here, in January 1796, after she gave birth to another son over there in India, 3 months after that birth, he wrote these words. He says, "My poor wife must be considered insane and is the occasion of great sorrow. She was confined to her room." He eventually locked her room, and she was confined to that room. And I had to think how much of it was because he didn't take care of her and didn't take her into consideration. It was also said that the boys had to fend for themselves, and he was, again, a passive father. He bemoaned their bad deeds that they were doing, but he was too mild to fervently apply a remedy to their misbehavior. But in the end, his partner that was with him had kind of taken the boys under their wings, and his oldest son did become a minister later on in life. But we see, as we think about maybe these shortcomings, we'll call them, in these men's lives, fathers, as we look at what are we good at and what do we tend to gravitate to, a lot of times if something happens at home, there's things that come up. What do I do in this situation? What do I do with this child? The easy thing is to say, you know what, I don't know. I'm going to go off to work, or I'm going to go off to something I know I'm good at and let mom deal with it. But do we take the initiative to learn that we can instruct our children, that we are good at leading them in a God-fearing life? But we're good at work, a lot of times, us men anyway, either in business or we're good at teaching our sons work ethics. Do we take the same desire to teach them how to work, to teach them how to live a godly life? Or are we telling them that the only thing that matters is who has the most money? And I had to think of 1 Timothy 6:6. It says, "Godliness with contentment is great gain." Are we teaching them contentment? Are we teaching them, as verse 10 would say, "For the love of money is the root of all evil"? Are those the principles that we're teaching them? Or are we teaching them, get it at all cost? Maybe we're good at church work. Maybe you're a good pastor. Maybe you're a good Sunday school teacher, a good superintendent. Do we get into, I don't know if you read the book, Men Are Like Waffles, Women Are Like Spaghetti. It talks about how spaghetti's all intertwined and they have tentacles going everywhere. But men, we're kind of like a waffle block. We're in this block. I'm at work. Don't bombard me with anything else. I can't think more than that. And do we forget that there are other blocks to deal with? And I can get like that. I live at work, basically, and the house is just, I walk to work, and my children get to come out to the office when they come home from school. Do I take the time to listen to their stories, or do I say, you know what, hey, Dad's busy, I can't think about that? Or do I show them that they're important, that they can come and talk to me? What consumes our time? Is it our sports? Is it electronics? Is it our business? What are we good at? And these things they can all be 24/7. He says, "I've fought a good fight." And he's talking about the crown of life that's laid up for him. But what is our fight? Is our fight just for work, or is it our fight to raise our children well, that they can be all that God wants them to be? If we as parents, if we fail at business, if we fail at a new recipe that you tried, do we give up? Do we just say, well, forget that, I'm going to go do something else? A lot of times, no, we don't give up. We try again. We get up, shake off the dust of our failures, and we press forward. Are we willing to invest that time and energy into our children? There'll be times where we fail. Are we willing to get up and to say, you know what, I'm going to do better? Maybe we don't have the answers. Are we willing to sit down and look at the Bible and say, what is truth? What are the answers? Or are we saying, all my children want is my wallet. They want my car. Maybe they need, hey, Dad, my phone's 6 months old. I need a new phone. Something like that. Is that how we look at our children? But what is truly being a father? The term fathering means to treat with protective care. Are we treating our children with protective care? It means being involved in their lives. Are we involved? not just at home. We're not just at home sitting on our recliner, but we're involved with them. We get up, we do things with them, we help them with their schoolwork, we play games with them, whatever it is that they need. We take time to sit and listen. Another one is being emotionally engaged with our children. Are we emotionally engaged? And it's having influence in our child-raising decisions. Are we involved, or do we just throw that on mom or grandpa and grandma? A lot of grandpa and grandmas are getting that thrown on them. Parents don't have the time to deal with it. Today in America, it's said 43% of all children live without their fathers. And I'm not sure what year this was, if this was real current or exactly when this survey was, but 43% of children live without their fathers. 90% of all homeless and runaway children, 71% of pregnant teenagers, 71% of high school dropouts, and 75% of adolescent patients in chemical abuse centers come from homes without fathers. Are fathers important? Are they necessary? I think we can say a resounding yes to that. And sometimes we look at our children, our youth, and say, oh, they aren't doing this, they aren't doing that. But I think we have some of the best youth in our churches today. And as you invest your lives, your time, your energy, you will be rewarded for that. And it can be you grandparents, it can be you aunt and uncles, it can be church members. We were involved with our course up there in Lebanon County for 6 years, and it was a blessed time, and I think I gained more from it than what the youth did from me being there. But as I look back at the relationship that I can have with the youth, I value that. And parents, as we work with our children, as we invest time into our children's lives, it's rewarding. And as we look at it, I think there's a couple principles. We need to invest time would be one. We need to have energy, or invest in energy. We need to invest in love, and we need to have encouragement and truth for them. If I was at the course, I'm here because I got voted, nominated, it's my duty to be here, I'm here. Would I got much out of it? Would the youth got much out of it? The first step is being there. So time, investing time is the first step. But having energy, when I use the word energy, just let them know you enjoy being there. You enjoy being with them. It's not a burden to give up a night a week to be with them or with our families. It's not a burden to get down with them and spend time with them. We need to invest love. We need to love them. And I think when we do those three things, then we can do the fourth one, which is speak truth into their lives. When we invest time, we invest energy. When we tell them, or not just, no, we can't tell them, because if we just tell them, it don't mean anything. But when we show them that they are important, then we can speak truth into their lives, and they will accept it, and they will hear from us. And what you reap is a glorious relationship, whether it's with the youth at church or whether it's with our children. And I know in the end, everyone does have a free choice. So maybe there are times where we don't receive what we want. But for the most part, that's the truth. If we put our time and energy into it, we will get or we will reap a glorious reward for that. But what do our children really want? As I was studying, that was a question. What do our children want? I did a survey, sent a survey out to some of the youth. 4 questions I asked them. The first one was, what do you want most from your father? And again, I think this can be from mothers, maybe it's even from the church family. The first one that came back was quality time spent in spiritual and practical teaching. They want our lives, and that's that time, affirmation, that just came back time and time again. In maybe some different words, his appreciation was another. Love and appreciation, his approval of my life. That's what our children truly want. Not necessarily all the latest tech toys and gizmos and gadgets. Yes, they like to get gifts, but they truly want us. They want our lives. They want us to be involved in their lives. I flipped the question around and said, what is your deepest regret of your father? And you could take what they appreciated and kind of do a flip, and that's what they regretted. A lack of time came out. One said, not enough time spent with God, with the family. Ooh, that kind of steps on our toes, don't it? They know when we're not spending our time with our Father as we should. We're with the family. Lack of emotional connection. A father that's too busy. He doesn't have time to connect. Two of them said similar things. The one said the word nothing, and the other said, I don't have any. And isn't that what we're striving for? That our children can grow up and say, you know what, I didn't lack anything from my dad, from my mom, from my grandpa, grandma. Another one that was maybe a little different was, they said, I wish he wouldn't be late. As parents, as we make commitments to our children, you tell them you're going to be somewhere, you tell them you're going to do something, don't let them down. Then I ask them, what do you most admire about your father? And they had things along the line, to be someone I can talk to about different things in life. The sacrificing he does for others around him. He will drop anything to help me. Steady, predictable. His clear, level-headed thinking and big heart. In my growing up years, it seemed to me he never got angry and upset. That's what they admire. They don't admire your bank account, how big your business is. I mean, I shouldn't say they don't admire that, but that's not truly what they admire. It's when you sacrificially live for them. When we're sacrificially living, we're showing them Jesus' servant leadership, I believe. We're teaching them how Jesus led, and we're leading them to Christ as we give up of ourselves. The fourth question was, if you could say anything to encourage all fathers, what would you say? Spend time with your children. And this is coming from our youth, and this is what they have to encourage you as fathers, and I think that could be to the mothers too. My father has made mistakes, but I still know he loves me. A father shouldn't feel like he's a failure just because he's not perfect. Also, remember that we all give and show love differently. Learn your child's love language so that you can more easily capture their heart. Fathers, mothers, learn to admit mistakes. They know we're not perfect. They know they're not trying to say you need to be perfect, but just admit it. Don't just try to cover it up. I had to think of a story I read to the children as we had a little missionary story booklet that we were reading in devotions. And this was a missionary in El Salvador. He started a home for orphan children that were in trouble with the law, but they were still really young. And so he got a couple of these boys in, and he was only down in El Salvador a couple years, so his Spanish wasn't really great yet. And he had a gardener that was there, and the gardener came up to him one day and said, hey, these two little boys, they're saying a bad word. And he's like, oh, he didn't know that. And so the gardener told him what the word was, and the missionary repeated it over in his mind throughout the day to make sure he would remember what the word was, so when he talked to the boys that he would remember what the gardener had told him they were saying. So he sat down and told the boys they aren't supposed to say this, and the boys didn't really understand why, but they learned that they better not, because they knew what happened when they got into the office if they said this word. So they worked at trying not to say it, but it never really grasped them why it was wrong. Well, one day they went to town, and they took his wife and another girl with that was at the orphan home. And they dropped his wife and the little girl off so that they could do their material shopping and, lady shopping stuff. And he took the boys to get some shoes or whatever it was for them. And he loaded the boys up, and they're driving out of town. And all of a sudden it hit him that they did not get his wife and the girl. And just like that word popped out of his mouth. The car got deathly silent. And he's like, oh my, what do I do now? So he drove back, picked up his wife, and they were going home, and they started talking in English because the boys didn't know English. And he told her what he did, and he's like, what should I do? She's like, well, you probably should admit it and talk to him about it. So they got back to the compound, and he called the two boys into his office. He said, do you know why I called you here? Nope. He said, did you do anything wrong? Nope. Did I do anything wrong? First little boy goes, nope. Second little boy goes, you said that word. He's like, yeah, you're right, I did. He's like, that wasn't good. God's not pleased with that. And he said, I forget exactly what he all said in it right after that, but he came to the point where he said, I need to be punished. He said, you need to punish me. No, we don't want to do that. He's like, you gotta. And they ended up, they pled with him and said, no, let's just pray to Jesus. And so he said, okay, that's okay. We'll pray to Jesus and ask me not to say it and that you wouldn't say it. But in admitting to them his mistake, he showed them how awful it is for them to say the word. And they realized better, or for the first time maybe, why they shouldn't be saying it. Because he was willing to admit his mistake. And I think that's what we need to do as fathers. Be willing, mothers, be willing to admit we failed, and to go and apologize to our children. So as much as we need to have a good relationship with our children, to teach them who Christ is, to lead them to an understanding of Christ, there is another relationship that needs to be established that is important, and that is the husband and wife relationship. And I want to talk a little bit about that now, about what constitutes a Christian marriage. Because if we want to be able to truly teach our children what the mission of the Christian family is, to be leading them to what Christ is, our marriage is a picture that they will follow, will look at, and they'll draw, hey, this, what they're saying, how they're acting, this doesn't mesh up. Maybe you young people are like, this has nothing to do with me tonight. Just remember, 10 years or so, it might be a lot more pertinent, so you probably should learn it tonight of what makes a good marriage. So the one thing would be friendship, respect, affection, and humor with each other. Do we have a friendship with our mate? Song of Solomon 2, verses 10 to 13 says this, and I think it gives us a picture of what a good relationship is. It says there in Song of Solomon 2, verse 10, my beloved spake and said unto me, rise up, my love, my fair one, and come away. For lo, the winter is past, the rain is over and gone. The flowers appear on the earth, the time of singing of birds is come. The voice of the turtle is heard in our land. The fig tree putteth forth her greens, and the vines a tender grape give a good smell. Arise, my love, my fair one, and come away. This gives me a picture of, the winter's over, you've been penned up, spring is here. Who better to take out on a walk than my wife, than my husband? Come, let's go out and whatever it is. Maybe you don't like walking, maybe you enjoy running, or maybe you enjoy gardening, but come out, let's do something together, spend time together, let's enjoy each other. How do we define friendship? Being each other's best friend, doing things together, supporting each other's goals and aspirations, feeling affection for each other, having fun and laughter together, being the number one in each other's eyes. As you go back to your dating relationship, that pretty much describes the person you were dating, right? You were the number one in each other's eyes. You were best friends. Are you still? Is there still laughter together in your home? How do we practically demonstrate this? Our friendship, our love, our desire to be together. Maybe date nights. Do you still take your wife out on a date, men? Maybe you're saying, how do you do that? We have young children, we have a family. How do the two of us get away? That's where the grandparents come in. Hey, mom, dad. Maybe that's where the aunt and uncles come in. Or maybe your mom and dads are not around in your area. Join up with another couple and take turns keeping the children so that the other couple can get away. Heart-to-heart talks is another way to demonstrate your love for each other. And maybe this is more for us men, but we're coming home from work. You have put on a long day. Are you preparing your mind for a heart-to-heart talk with your wife? Or can you just can't wait for the children to get to bed so you can flop down and fall asleep? Maybe it's just me, but I need to prepare myself to, have a time of conversation, of joining with our wives in a heart-to-heart talk. It might be the only adult conversation she had today. She's looking forward to something other than 3-year-old, 4-year-old conversation. Are we willing to put aside our sleep, to stay awake, to listen to them? Another one is, this is more of a statement, but flowers are not an expense. They're an investment. Are we investing in our marriages? I was told that someone said, if you aren't investing in flowers, you might need to be investing in counseling, and counseling's pretty expensive, so maybe get the flowers. Second thing is, I labeled it a successful bid for attention. Deuteronomy 24:5 says, "When a man hath taken a new wife, he shall not go out to war, neither shall he be charged with any business, but he shall be free at home 1 year, and shall cheer up his wife, which he hath taken." How many of you men took off a year after you got married to cheer up your wife? Did your husbands do that? I'm not sure how that all looked or how that all worked, but do we give our full attention to each other when the other one is talking? Your wife ever say, or your husband ever say, "Are you listening? Are you hearing?" What does she mean by that? It means, whatever, put down the paper, turn away from the computer, and look. Yes, give full attention. Come out from under the car if you're changing the oil or whatever, and give full attention, not just, yeah, and they know you're miles away. In a successful marriage, partners turn towards each other 86% of the time, is what they say. In failed marriages, in divorcing couples, the average is 33%. So stop and think about that the next time you're called. Do I turn and give full attention to my partner? Maybe we could put it like this: listen, listen, listen. That's one I'm still working on. I'm married 17 years. But when they come to us with a problem, whichever you are, husband, wife, your partner comes to you with a problem. A lot of times they're not coming to you to get fixed. They're coming for you to listen. And especially for us men, do our wives start in, get a sentence or two in, and we go, "I got the answer for that. We can stop, end of discussion. Here's how you fix it. Good, conversation's over." we fixed the problem. That's not what they're looking for. Put the toolbox away. Put the tools away and just turn and listen to what they're saying. Maybe I think that her problem's ridiculous, but what about when it's me? Do I want my wife to feel that the thing I'm coming to her with is ridiculous, or do I want to feel important, that she has the time to hear what I'm saying? I want to be heard. So does she. Maybe we could put it give the illustration of a train crossroad. They say, when you come to a railroad, stop, look, and listen. And I think we need to do that in our marriages. And not just with our marriage partners, but with our children too. With our youth. Someone comes to you, stop whatever you're doing. Whatever you're in the middle of. Stop, turn and look at them, and then listen to them. Because just like a railroad crossing, a train is coming. And if we don't do those three things, stop, look, and listen, and just barrel ahead, what happens when a car and a train meet? There's pieces fly. And that will happen in our relationships too. The pieces will fly. Respect each other's needs. It says in Proverbs 20:6-7, most men will proclaim every one his own goodness, but a faithful man who can find? The just man walketh in his integrity. His children are blessed after him. Women, if you have a faithful man, it says, who can find? Do you thank God for a faithful husband? For a husband who's there for you, who will provide for you, care for you? Does he know that you're thankful for him as the gift that God has given to you? Proverbs 19:14 says, houses and riches are an inheritance of fathers, and a prudent wife is from the Lord. Men, do your wife hear you pray to God, thanking God that he has given you the gift of her? If you have a prudent wife, do you thank the Lord for her? Erich Fromm was a late German psychologist, and he wrote, if love were only a feeling, there would be no basis for the promise to love each other forever. Let me read that again. If love were only a feeling, there would be no basis for the promise to love each other forever. In other words, the wedding vow anticipates the reality of a radical difficulty. And when you come to the altar to get married, we're not thinking about that difficult road. It's just, we love each other, and we're never going to face those difficulties that my parents did. No, because we love each other. But, it's in the fine print of the marriage vows, in sickness and health, in prosperity, in adversity. Did we realize what we were saying that day? Did we read the fine print? Do we understand? I took those questions and asked them to the husband and wives. What do you want from your husband, wife? From the husbands, respect came out time and time again. Intimacy, love, companionship. That we're both aiming at the same goals. Do your children know that mom and dad are on the same page? Even grandpa and grandma, do they know that grandpa and grandma are striving for the same goal? Wife said what they want most: spiritual leadership, time spent together. What do you most admire about your husband was another question I asked him. Her love and support to God and his church, to myself and to our children. Her ability to maintain an orderly house. How she defends and desires the best for our children. Do our mothers, do your family know that your husband, your children know that they're important to you, that you're going to defend them, that you want the best for them? What the wives said was, he works and plays hard with the children. His insight and wisdom, which offer security. His guidance in worship. Spiritual leadership, man, that's what ladies want, our children want. Direction for the family. and of course his good looks. Do you believe your partner is good looking? And that's an amazing thing. We all can think we got the best one, and I hope we all do. Do they know that we love being with them? If you could say anything to encourage a husband or a wife, what would you say? Learn to laugh at your own mistakes. Now, this ain't sin, as we were talking about admitting our faults earlier, but, we messed up in baking the recipe, and our children are grumbling at how hard as a brick this is. Do we learn to laugh at it? Or, Dad, you chewed your son out for backing the tractor into something, and you end up hitting something. What do you say then? Do you laugh at it? Or do we take ourselves too seriously sometimes? Learn to enjoy life with each other. You can do much more together than you can when you're working against each other. So spend time communicating common goals and interests. Get on the same page. Ladies, this was maybe for you. Almost assuredly, your husband loves you. It may come in a hard-to-understand code sometimes, but he truly does love you. Maybe the gift he got you was more for him, but he didn't know what to get you. He was trying, at least. The thought counts, right? But men, that's not an excuse. Learn to know what your wife loves, and it takes time, it takes effort. Try to find the good in everything and focus on that. Don't be scared of hard things in your marriage. Embrace them. This was a wife telling to the husbands. There are hard things in marriage, but embrace them. Wrestle with them. Because it is working through those painful things that will bring healing and wholeness in your relationship. So maybe a little bit in review. Be a family man. Be there for your children. If we gain the whole world but lose our children, what have we gained? Nothing. Ladies, don't feel unimportant if you stay at home. You aren't out there getting the pat on your back. You aren't getting the paycheck maybe every week. But you made the best choice in life to be there for your children. Be there for your grandchildren. If you're single, take these things and apply them to your nieces, nephews, to your younger siblings, to a youth here at the church. And as I was studying this, an African slogan kept running through my mind. And that was, it takes a whole village to raise a child. Each one of us is important to give leadership and direction to our children. May God bless you.